Welcome. This is John Martinka with a synopsis of chapter one of my book, If They Can Sell Pet Rocks, Why Can't You Sell Your Business for What You Want? And this is going to be put out on audio and video podcasts. So those of you just on audio have to use your imagination for the screens that I'm showing here, the first one being a cover of the book. Let me start out by going through the preface of the book, and I am going to read to you part of that preface. The first uh, part, the opening, is from Wikipedia. It defines what a pet rock is. Pet rocks were a 1970s collectible conceived by advertising executive Gary Dahl. The first pet rocks were ordinary gray stones bought at a builder's supply store. They were marketed like live pets, and it goes on to say they sold over $1.5 million, and he became pretty wealthy. I then defined what I call a business for sale, one of millions of companies annually that owners want to sell. Unfortunately, perhaps as few as 20% of these companies ever sell. Go on about it's an aging population of business owners, and at this point, a majority of owners are older than 55. Now, when owners come to sell their business or decide they want to sell their business, believe me, they don't get up and go to that proverbial dimmer switch and put it down over the next 3 to 5 years and get it all spiffed up and ready. They wake up, they say, flip the switch. I want to sell. Find me someone to buy it. Find me someone to help me sell it. And that's what this book is all about. We've gone through the definitions, and it becomes then, why did I write this book? And I wrote it because in my research and looking at a lot of books on selling a business, on exiting, less than 25% of the information was on getting the business ready to sell for maximum value. Most of them were on negotiations, legalities, diligence, things like that. And in the beginning of the book, there is this diagram, and it shows the evolution of a business from the entrepreneur just starting it to eventually becoming a manager, a leader, and then a true CEO, as that all leads to legacy. Actually, it's legacy all the way through. It's just a different kind of legacy. When you're a true CEO and you are working on the business just about all the time, you are creating a different legacy than when you are a active doer in the business. So keep that in mind. That's where you want to end up. Now, chapter one is titled Action Plan to Sell Your Business, and we will get to more of that later. Now, in the first chapter of the book, it starts out, one of the first couple pages is this diagram of a prison with the escape plan and the owner leaving. And when your business gets to the point that you are seeing it as a prison, it is time to put that plan together to make your exit. And as I like to say, to exit with style, grace, and more money. Well, buyers are also in prison. I was in New York a number of years ago, and I took a picture on either Fifth Avenue or Madison Avenue of all the office buildings. And I put that picture in a newsletter, and I said, every one of those windows is a prison cell. These people commute into work, they sit in their cubicle or their office, they commute home, and it's just a job. It's servitude in some way to be doing that. And that's what drives people to want to own a business, by the way. Now, I used to think that a breach of confidentiality was the main difference between someone selling a business and someone selling a house. Because think about it, when you sell your house, you want everyone to know about it. When you sell your business, owners don't want customers, employees, suppliers, etc., knowing they're for sale. I now have changed my tune. I realize the biggest difference is the preparation or lack thereof. When you sell your house, what do? You organize the cupboards and closets and pantries. You clean, you paint, you fix up, you landscape, you do all the things to make it attractive to buyers. Do most owners do that? No, as I mentioned before, it's not that common. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal published a number of years ago from a study that 90% of businesses are not prepared to sell for maximum value when the owner decides it's time to sell. So, what does preparation mean? Uh, from the outside, just like a house, you want it to have curb appeal. Friend of mine, associate, we visited a past client of mine. They were thinking of selling their company. We walked in, we looked at each other, we rolled our eyes. It was filthy. The walls were filthy. The carpet was worn and dirty. Uh, they took us on a tour. Now, yes, this was a factory, but I've seen factories where you could eat off the floor. And when we hit the lunchroom, I realized why the employees were eating in their cars. It was no better than that entryway. In fact, it might have been worse. So the rest of the preparation is the things like the finances and the operations and the sales and everything else that goes into it. So as you talk about selling, you got to understand where your threats are. And one of the threats to business owner these days are baby boomers, because they are such a big portion of ownership. And as this slide shows, 2/3 of middle market business owners are expected to retire. Uh, their average age is 67, and between 35 and 45% of these owners are 65 and older. That's a big deal. It's competition. So why sell? Why would anyone sell their business? I get asked that all the time. Well, why wouldn't they just hire a manager? Well, for one, it doesn't work. And there's still the worry and there's still the risk of being on the hook for all the finances, etc. What you don't want to do is have a catastrophic event hit, divorce, death, or disability. You want to be ready so you can retire on your terms. You can leave maybe because there's a health thing. You're not forced to, but it makes sense. Or you're burned out. Or things in your life just happen and it says, time to leave. So for those of you on just the audio version, there's a picture of an old rotary telephone here, bright red, and it signifies, will you be ready when the phone rings? Now, this is a story not in the book. It's about my friend Brian Quint with Aquaquip here in the Seattle area. And Brian recently spoke to two groups about selling the family business, the 60-year-old family business. And so I'm relaying some things of what he said. He was ready when the phone rang. He got a call from the 800-pound gorilla in the pool supply business. Now, Brian's company, Aquaquip, sells primarily hot tubs and grills and fireplaces and things like that, gas fireplaces and things like that. And this company, that Leslie's, that ended up buying him, was big in all the states where pools are more prevalent because of warmer weather, but they wanted a hot tub presence. He was ready when that phone rang. He was ready when he went through, and this is his term, which I just love, a financial colonoscopy. I will call it a business colonoscopy. And you got to be ready like Brian was. Being ready starts not when the phone rings, but well before, when you decide you are going to sell. And, in corporate sales, everybody says, who is the economic buyer? Who can say yes without asking anyone else? And when it comes to buying or selling a business, that economic buyer is often the spouse. I was working with a client and we had done a project together. This was our second one. And he had been approached by a buyer and we were negotiating and we had come to a handshake agreement. And he says, well, I guess I better talk to my wife about this. Oops. Big oops. She was furious. Not that he was selling the company. She hated the business. She was furious because he didn't bring her into the loop early. He didn't trust her. Very important. Get the economic buyer on board. Now, my first three questions to people who are saying, I want to sell, I'm thinking of selling in the future. Have you worked with a financial person to determine if the amount of money you're going to get is enough for your next great adventure in life? And if that next great adventure in life is retirement, does your spouse want you around 24/7? So, what happens if you don't do this? And this doesn't happen to everybody because most people don't have something happen. To paraphrase that bumper sticker, things happen. Ran into a company. It was a value added reseller of piping products, industrial piping. And the owner died. Just not like a heart attack, but, it was a pretty quick thing, 30, 60 days. His son, who was a foreman in the shop, took over the business. It took him a year to a year and a half to take it from being worth multi-millions of dollars to being worth the value you would get liquidating it. No plan, no management team. Dad was just overly dependent, an overly dependent person on the business. And then there's another story. Lady had started a business, ran it for a few decades, got a very serious illness. She was bedridden for over a year. She finally passed away. Her husband was a retired engineer. He was more concerned with bowling and his friends than the business, other than the distributions he was getting. So the business was staffed by about 50%. People had long lunch hours. They had 6 weeks of vacation. There was no use it or lose it policy. So by the time the business started going downhill, because he wasn't paying attention to it, and it started escalating, it was the reverse. It was the reverse of a hockey stick growth. He found a buyer. He ended up paying those employees with all that accrued vacation, well over $100,000, to pay off the vacation and PTO time before he sold the company. He got because of the status of the business, he got a very small down payment and an earnout. I mean, in other words, no guaranteed payments, just based on performance. That's not what you want to have happen. So let's go over to different types of buyers. Individuals, corporate refugees. They want it to be their job. They want to have the job of company president. We have, in part of that, people who put together search funds, or sometimes they are called fundless searchers. And the difference is search funds get investors funding their search for a business as part of their equity raise. Others will find the business and then get investors. You can sell to family. You can sell to management. Does that always work? Not really. Yeah, there's a lot of success stories, but Matthew is a perfect example. Matthew bought a business, and the reason he was able to buy that business was because the 4-person management team, after being approached by the founder to buy the company, said, "Oh yeah, we'd love to buy the company. This sounds great." They went to the bank, and then it was, "Oh, we have to personally guarantee the loan. Oh, we have to put our home equity as collateral. No, thank you. I think we'll just go back to being employees." And Matthew was able to buy that company, got a good deal. We have other small business owners who want to grow by acquisition. We have large companies, strategic buyers. If you're too small business, they're not going to be interested, but if they feel they can add on for geographic reasons or customers or product line that you have or people, and if you're of a good enough size, they'll be interested. The same as private equity. It's got to be a decent sized business. And then we have family offices, which are a lot like private equity. It's uber wealthy families that invest in small business to diversify their portfolio and usually have a higher management team to do so. So, what is a buyer looking for? They're looking for where they can match their skills with the company vision and the company potential. And all three of those come together, as in the center there, number four, it's a win-win situation. Now, in addition to that, we've got our stools here. And I am going to move myself for those of you watching it so you can see that business stool. For a business buyer, it takes the right amount of money and the right skills for the company you're targeting and a good personality. Now, for the business, we need the three-legged stool of operations, sales and marketing, and they're in sync because of the finance and administration department. They tell you if things are working well. Now, let's finish up chapter 1 with an action plan. This is my action plan, and for those of you on audio, I will read the slide. Arrange all the affairs of the company. Coach and counsel the company, its people, processes, and systems. In other words, get them running at maximum efficiency. Transmit, be able to transmit and teach all the good things about your firm. Because, right, face it, you're not selling a company. You're making a sale to a buyer on why they should buy your company. And you're transmitting those intricacies that make your company special. The operations, the management systems that you have in place that will make a transition smooth. And the numbers, the financials, in understandable form, straightforward, with no tricks. And you can say this all the time, but owners don't listen. Don't blend a personal and business checkbook. Don't make the bank and the buyer dig for profit. Pay taxes. Oh, I was on a meeting the other day, an online meeting, and we were talking about this, and one of the financial people said, it's his exact same advice. And I commented, I will speak to groups and I will say, ignore your CPA. And after they gasp, I say, pay tax, show profit. The buyer and the banks want to see profit. So let me finish up chapter 1 as we talk about getting your business ready for sale. And as we're going to eventually take it to the market and find the right buyer. And by the way, little sneak preview for parts of the rest of the book. Money is not the most important thing in a deal. It's way up there. It's finding the right buyer. The one who can pay that money will make all the payments, will not give the business back, will treat your people well, your customers well, etc. Let me show you how it's done well on a family transition. So I worked with this couple for a number of years. Dad had bought the business for under $100,000. Okay, under $100,000. By the time I met them, it was worth about $1 million. And they were on a nice growth trajectory. And eventually they hired their son as a salesperson. They didn't give him any corner office. He was knocking on doors, literally knocking on doors. He did well. They made him sales manager. He did well. By now, the company was worth about $5 million. They had given him 10% of the shares. When it came time for them to exit, they sold him the other 90%. He's the company president. Dad was the chairman of the board. Mom stayed on for a while as CFO, which she had been doing, transitioning both mom and dad out, a 20-year annuity, because that's what they wanted. They knew they'd have their finger on the pulse of the business for 2 or 3 years. They knew it was their son. They felt comfortable with it. That is one way in which you exit with style, grace, and more money. The other way is to find one of the other buyer types that we talked about who will go to the bank and get you a lot of cash at closing, and just make sure it's the right buyer. So again, this is John Martinka, Chapter 1. If they can sell pet rocks, why can't you sell your business for what you want? Check out our website, martinkaconsulting.com. Feel free to call or email 425-576-1814 or john@johnmartinka.com. And I wish you success, whether you are thinking of exiting in the next year or 5 years or whenever. Thank you.